Good afternoon, everybody, and a very warm welcome to Mildenhall Districts. And my name's Susanna, and I live with trains. And this is probably about the third time now that I've tried to do this intro, because I've actually already filmed the whole video. I stuck it on my computer thinking that the intro was done, and guess what? It wasn't. So now I'm sort of doing this as a bit of a kind of like an afterthought to the main video. So if you've already seen it, I hope you've enjoyed it. And so like I said, so my name's Susanna and I live with trains, and today in this video we're going to be talking about the extension of my Freightliner terminal, because it's going to be growing even bigger, and that's basically reworking of track work and scenery in its current space, but just to, as I strive for efficiency and reliability and playability on the layout and at that front end, to make it even more enjoyable than what it already is. Now, the reason that it's going to end up being a bit of an extension and a bit of a kind of a long job, this isn't a 5-minute job that's going to be done over a weekend. This is a week's work at least, and I'm currently off at the moment, which is one of the reasons why I'm pushing to do this now, because I don't want to have to really do this whilst I've just got a couple of days off here and there. So this is going to involve, like I said, track reconfiguration, lifting, moving, doing ballasting, scenery work, ripping up scenery, putting in new scenery, and just basically it's all kind of subtle, nothing major, but it is all for the greater good of the layout. So I'm going to leave it here, and like I said, you can let me know whether you've enjoyed it already, because like I said, this intro is actually after the main video. So take care, and I'll speak to you shortly. So here's my current Freightliner depot, but it's been totally evacuated of buildings, auxiliary bits and pieces, locos, everything's been evacuated, because there's going to be some more changes here. I've already made some to improve the area, and I've basically added these two Hornby derailleurs that I had, these old ones, painted the sides up so they blend in with the sides. And when the building's on top and lit up, I know exactly where to park the wagons to uncouple them. And that gives a good use for using my old Hornby derailleurs. I've also improved things, because I've also added a wall in here. I'm going to add a building there. And I've also added this track in the middle here. There was actually a building in the middle, but I've now decided to put where that footprint is of one building, put the other building directly behind it. That opens up this middle bit, which was quite congested and tight before. So that will open that up a bit more. This outside line here, all the way up to the top, will be a storage siding for locomotives. Excuse me, forgive my voice, it's still a bit on the rough side. And what I'm proposing to do is to take this inner line out completely. And basically what I'd like to do, one of the things I'm not happy about, is the width between that and that. So I'd like to make it a bit wider to give a bit more depth to the yard and open it out, and also the same on this side. When I'm running trains, I tend to just run one line anyway. So I'm just going to probably just basically take the inner line out, and also down at this end, extend that out as well. So that's going to be a bit of a job, which is why whilst I'm off, this is the time to do it, because this isn't the sort of job that I can do over a weekend. And I really need the time to do it, because this isn't going to just take 5 minutes to do. This is going to take quite a while, and it's going to be quite messy. So down at this end, what I'm proposing to do is remove this track all the way along up to the top and replace it with concrete sleeper track. And also, when we get to the top, I'll explain a bit more, but basically just to marry this all up, using the sleeper track that I've saved from this inner line to then do the rest of it over there. And then one of the main things I really want to do, which has really been bugging me, is that this entrance to the yard is backing on with 2 points. I'm going to remove these 2 points, so it'll be just a straight track all the way through here. I mean, it is reliable, I haven't had any derailments, but I want to get rid of these 2 points. And I'm going to make this yard come out onto this line here, and then cross over back around the corner. So you've got a bit of a head shunt for the shunter and a few wagons without it impacting the main line, because that's one of the things that's been bothering me. is the fact that, or that, it's not like I lose sleep over it or anything, but what I mean by bothering me is that I'd like the idea of a train coming in here with its wagons to come into the sidings here, to come into here, come all the way down to the end, and keep the track up to a point, say up to there, with the buffers on the end. Then the 08 could come from here, back onto this line, reverse onto this bit here, without impacting the main line, because the main line will then be that one there. And then it can do its work along here without it affecting any trains going around the layout. And I'm going to use this little bit here from here to here as a bit of a head shunt for the yard. So basically the main line will no longer be from here, it will just use the outer loop all the way around. But as you can appreciate, this is not going to be a 5-minute job. Now all these changes, and people will probably sort of say, oh, why do you need to make all these changes? It's all about tweaking the layout and improving it. And essentially the track plan along here is still essentially the same. You can still run around it like I did before. The only difference that I did here is the fact that I've added, because before this line here and this line here used to go into a Y point and migrate into that line there without this one being here. But now it's just been added that one there. So that's the only real change. But now I want to just change the exit point so it goes onto this line here. And that will mean that I can use the shunter without using the main line and affecting the main line, so I can have a train running around and still use the shunting around here without it affecting the main line. So we're going to have to start cracking on now. It's not going to be a 5-minute job, but that's the reason why I want to do it whilst I'm on holiday, because I know it's not going to take 5 minutes. Like I said, it's not the sort of job that I can do over a weekend, so it's going to take a bit of time. But I think once you see the results at the end, you'll see what I mean and how much better it is. So as you can see, we've kind of moved on a fair bit. It might not seem like it, but we have. As you can probably tell, the inner track has now been cut from there and lifted up all the way around to there. And as you can probably see, there is the concrete sleeper track that I've lifted, and that's now going to go over there, which I'll show you in a bit more. So at the moment, it looks a bit of a mess. Oh, sorry about that, I keep kicking the tripod. But what I want to do is basically add that much so the lorries and everything like that have a better space around the back here. I don't really use the inner one anyway, so it's just going to make this a little bit of a bigger footprint for the vehicles and more space, and then it's going to make the yard slightly bigger. Also, it's going to make the transition a lot easier. So at the moment, you can sort of see where I'm proposing to put the concrete sleeper track that I've lifted and sort of marry that up with what's existing there. And that will kind of go straight round back to where the main line is, but there won't be any points along there, so that'll be a lot smoother. And then the exit for the yard will then become the exit of the inner loop, which is there. So that will go into the inner loop from where it's coming in before, and that will be a lot easier. So since the last clip, once again, we've moved on a fair amount, and I should have filmed some of it as I was going along, but to be honest with you, some of it isn't actually all that overly exciting, and quite a bit of it is self-explanatory. But as you can see from this particular shot, that the Freightliner terminal yard has got considerably bigger. Now, a lot of this is to do with space constraint and trying to get this to work, because obviously I feel bad for saying it, to be quite honest with you, because considering my layout's pretty big, and to be talking about space constraints is a bit kind of rich, really. But in terms of trying to create and do this area justice, it is a bit of a space constraint. Essentially, what it is I like to try and make this layout to make sense as best as possible. And it's not always possible, because obviously because of this space constraint. And so you've got to try and sometimes sort of just make compromises in order to get things to work. But I managed to get this to work better than what it has done. So let me just talk you through it. We'll start with the track plan. And as you can see, like I suggested before, we've now just got a single line that goes all the way around the outer sort of perimeter instead of the dual line. Now the dual line I never really used a huge amount, but it is still partially here. As you can see, it finishes here at this end. So the idea of it is basically using that inner track as a siding, as an arrival and departure track for the Freightliner wagons and rolling stock. So it doesn't interfere with the main line. So for example, if I wanted to have a train running around on the main line, I wouldn't have to continuously stop what I was doing in order to sort of like jump in and out the traffic all the time. So this kind of makes it like almost like a self-contained yard to a degree. So if I sort of show you what I mean, now there is an old Hornby rerailer. It's not kind of like the best thing in the world in terms of its appearance, but it will do a job, and I have 3 of them. The other 2, as you can probably see, that I've tried to blend them in as best as I can, are along here. And as you can see by the green and the yellow markings, I've created a footprint. I haven't finished with the other footprint of where the building's going because I've still got the yellow lines to go around this outer perimeter here. So basically you'll have the one big building is here as usual, and then we've got the second building, which is the 2 road, will go back in its normal place. But now what I've done is I've moved the single sort of higher building and put it directly behind this one, basically opening out this section, which has basically allowed me to fit in this storage track here, because before the actual building for the single line covered this line here, and it used to overhang here and over this track here. But now by moving it over, I've actually opened this up a bit, which is much better. And then what you can see down here is the arrival and reception track. The arrival and departure track, which is like the reception road. So the local will come up towards the end. That rerailer will unhook the wagons behind it when the 08 jumps behind to pull them out. And then there's a smaller head shunt up the front, which is what I'm going to show you shortly. But whilst we're down this end, you can also see that the footprint of the yard has got considerably bigger, because again, I had some smaller vehicles, say here, and there wasn't much space to spin round, and there isn't still a huge amount, but it's a bigger footprint. So that's much better. It's also much deeper at this end, because we've now sort of gained an extra sort of like 2 or 3 inches from here. So from it used to be, the other line used to come in about there. So we've now gained some more space down at this end to open this out. So that's going to give more room to put some more infrastructure and everything like that. So that's going to be even better. And that wagon there that you see there, that's actually just a scrap wagon that I've made out of card. And that's just, I sort of based it on my MJA wagons. And so I've got a welding light underneath that as it is, but I need to put the figures. I've got the figures, I just haven't fitted them. And then also around the back there, I've also today added the shrubbery and bushes along there, along the back end, to segregate this arrival and departure track from the main line. And then I'm going to put some more security fencing all the way along the back. And as we carry on walking around here, so forgive me, you can now see from this side that I've relayed all of this track. It's all ballasted. I've even done the crossing. And then here is where it changes. If I can just get in, hang on a second. So this is the main line, and it's now got no points whatsoever on it, because we've now using this middle line, which used to be the inner passing loop for the Freightliner yard. So that means that this main line has got no connection to the yard from here, like it used to, because before that point used to be here, and then it used to go into the yard. So there was no head shunt or anything here. And it just, for anything arriving into the yard, you'd always have to use the main line, which was a bit awkward. So what I've now done is I've left this bit as it is. So this inner line that used to be the inner passing loop, I've still left it connected. But what I've done is I've now moved this point here further back. So this allows me to get the shunter and some wagons to use this section here as a head shunt without it affecting the main line here at the front. And then I've moved and added a crossover over here to allow the trains to come out the yard and onto the main line through here and back on the right line of track. So that's what I've done. But I haven't tested any of this yet, so that's why this side hasn't been ballasted yet. But the other side has. But that's the whole premise of it. So this is going to be much better and more user-friendly and bigger. So that's kind of like the whole footprint. And it's quite good to sort of see the footprint. I'm going to just close this up now from a distance so you can see the track plan from here. So you can see how it works. The original track plan of the passing loop still exists, so that is pretty much still identical. The only thing I've done is, if I just drop this down again and zoom in a bit, basically these 2 points, this one here and this one, used to feed into a Y point coming from the other side. So it used to go into the one track, being this one here. But now what I've done is I've taken out the Y point and just kept the, because basically I can't lift up these 2 points here because I inadvertently soldered it. I think I had a bad connection and I soldered them together. So rather than try and split them and damage the point, I just left it as was and just added the extra track in there. And it actually works out quite well for a storage track, because then that means if I bring a tanker in there, it can go into the fueling point there to be offloaded. Once it's ready to go out, I can use the shunter to reverse it, maybe temporarily store it over here, or if not, start adding it to the arrival departure track, which is here, ready to be collected by a locomotive. And then 66 could come out, if I just zoom you out, from the sheds that will be over here, along here, along here, along here, along the head shunt here, not affecting the main line, and then taking its time to back itself on to the train, whether it be the wagons, well, depending on whether it's MJAs or HIAs or TEAs, and it could just back onto the train there, and it's the same coming inbound. So then that way, once it's in, it's not affecting the main line, and when it goes out or be preparing to go out, I'm not having to use the main line as part of the sequence to get the train ready. So that's why I've gone through all this trouble of sort of redoing it, because I've been trying to work out how I'm going to do it. I was going to use the interchange yard at the other side, the network rail yards, but again, I'd have to use the main line in order to set the train up, and I didn't really want to do that. So the only way to sort of do what I want was to do this, which I think will work much better anyway. So I'm now going to carry on and do some work. I'm going to create a small embankment around this outer perimeter here, and then that will give a bit of safety for the trains coming along around this bend, so they don't, if they do derail, they're not going to end up falling to their demise, as it were. So there you go. That's what we're doing so far. So I'm going to do a bit more, and then I'll film a bit more, and then hopefully we'll eventually get to where we want to go. So welcome to this final part on my extension of doing the Freightliner yard and just making it more efficient. As you can now see, it's changed quite dramatically now, and I'm so much more happier with this arrangement than I had did before. The glaringly obvious thing to look at in this sort of picture is the fact that I've now done the embankment all the way around, which I'm so much more pleased with. I didn't like how I had it before. It was just I just didn't like it. And so there's a gradual, you can't really tell, well, you might be able to tell sort of along there, but there is a gradual embankment. It's nothing too steep. And also it protects the trains, particularly along this bottom edge here, whereas before there was literally nothing. So now there's a bit of an embankment there. So if anything derails at speed, it's not going to go on the floor and get ruined forever and ever. So I'm really, really pleased with that. The other big thing you'll notice is that I've started going around doing the fencing. And as you can see, the fencing is done all the way around. And I've run out of fencing because it ran out over there, and I've got a little bit more to do. This is my old security fencing, which I've reused. And the reason why there isn't quite enough this time round is because obviously the footprint is slightly bigger, so it's used up slightly more fencing. but I really wanted to do the fencing along the back because I wanted to start putting the buildings there and getting the back done as best as I could. And last night I'm actually gonna probably do a video on it, but I did last night actually test the this track plan to see how it worked and how it operated. And apart from a few little niggles, it actually worked perfectly well. One of the niggles was that the rerailer, which I've got three, so bear with me a minute. So I've got three old Hornby rerailers, which is 1, 2, and there's a third one. Where is it? Over there. See, I've started blending that one in so well that I couldn't even notice it myself. And if I zoom in even further over in that corner, you can see the Hornby rerailer. Now, at first, when I used it last night, I'd lost one of the actual metal springs that sort of bring the rerailer up and down. So I made my own, and I've had to sort of like customize it and cut it down to enough and try and mimic what the original ones were on these ones, just to make sure that it worked correctly. So at first it didn't, but I've now sorted it out. So now that works perfectly well, just like these two down here. And then we've got the pallet down there. Now that pallet is there as a marker. Now the reason why that pallet is there to look like it's been dumped, but it's also a marker. Because what I've realised is I've got, unfortunately, well, I say unfortunately, it's good and it's not good. I like the idea of having these buildings that I have here, but they're actually blocking the view. So, and that rerailer is directly behind these two buildings, 1, 2. And because of that, I've had this marker put down. So when I was testing it yesterday, I brought the loco as far as I could within the rerailer, see where it uncouples, and then put a little marker piece over there. So I know exactly where to stop the train when I can't really see the rerailer. And in theory, it should always stop on the same mark all the time. It's kind of a bit like on the platforms when you kind of go on the train stations, and it says 2 to 3 car stops and 4 to 5 and 8 to 12 and all that kind of stuff. It gives the drivers an idea of where to stop the train depending on what length of train they have. And this is basically the same principle. You're basically using a pallet as a marker to give me a guide as to where to stop the train, to make sure that it's uncoupling in the right position, even though I can't see it because it's behind the building. So it now sort of looks really nice. I also tested this bit yesterday, and so I had some issues along this line here for the wagon works, partially because it wasn't cleaned properly, so it was stuttering a bit at first. And then there was a couple of, like, some of the fish plates needed better contact, so I had to give them a bit of a squeeze with the pliers to make sure that they were contacting correctly. And then I also had an issue with the Batman 08s because I didn't realise this, and it's like somebody once mentioned, I can't remember who it was now, that Sanders, CR Steve, an American guy, and he was talking about the Sanders on the American locomotives and how much they're a bane to him and all the rest of it. And it is the same for me. And what I mean by that is the sanding pipes on a lot of these locos get down so low because obviously the idea behind these sanding pipes is to give traction to the locomotives. So the pipe has to directly be virtually on top of the wheel and sort of spread the goo on the rails to give the train the traction it needs. But in modelling purposes, what it does is it means that it tends to catch on everything. And I didn't realise this at first, but my 08, when it was uncoupling here, every time it started reversing backwards, it stopped. It was running, the wheels were spinning, but it wouldn't move. And it kept getting caught, and it's because the sanders are so low, they kept catching. So I've had to adjust the sanders to make sure that it gets over. So now it runs properly now over here. So it's just one of those little niggles that you have to sort of deal with. So as we move to this side of the layout, you can see how the arrival and reception track, departure track, is nicely blended in now with all the fencing, segregating that from the main line, which is over the far side there. And also something I haven't really mentioned at all is the disappearance of Mildenhall Riverside Station. And some of you may have been wondering about that because I haven't mentioned it at all in this video. And obviously Mildenhall Riverside Station used to be along here, and now that's no more, and it won't be coming back either. The reason for that is, again, it's like you're trying to shoehorn things in, and I wasn't so keen on that, and it just seemed like I was just trying to and I didn't like that. And the other thing is when I watched, there's a chap on YouTube who did who'd done some drone footage of Freightliner Leeds, and they had this kind of nice view where they had this track along the side. They actually used this storage line that I'm using as an arrival, reception, departure. They basically stored all their locomotives along here, which would be quite cool, actually. I can imagine running the cam truck along the outside and having all my Freightliner locomotives all kind of parked up along this line. And I think that would look quite cool, with the fencing segregating the main line from the Freightliner yard. And then you've got the bushes on either side. And I just think it just looks so much better without the station, because I just think it looks too crammed. And this way now, it's just like the train can just serenely just go around the layout. And so therefore, we're now down to just one station on the main line in the main area, which is Chaston Road, which is your connection to the Heritage Line. Obviously, down in the kitchen, you've got Oddington by the Sea, and on the other side, just behind the backdrop, is Beringer Station, the little miniature version of it, of what was. Something else to mention for those of you who might be interested, because I'm sure there's people out there who probably are, is how do you create curved security fencing and create curved fencing. So let me just show you that. So this is my sort of curved fencing, and this is made up of all the fencing that I had left over and all the rest of it, and salvaged what I could. I'm going to have to buy some more, in which case, if I do, some of these odd bits of, so I can see some of it, some of these are just a few pieces long, but if I've got some extra, then I'm just going to replace some of the ones that are really quite tatty along this front edge here to clean them up, but I'm not sure about that yet. But as you can see, what I've done is I basically used a glue gun. So the glue gun is there, and I've used the glue gun, and that holds it into place. And then what I've done is, as you've seen on the other side, I've bedded it in with some PVA on either side when I come to do the bushes. So you put a bead of PVA along the edge there, and then lay a load of bushes on the either side. Well, that's what I've done anyway. And that basically gets rid of any of this kind of like where you can see where the glue is. You cover all that up so that it just basically then looks like the fence is bedded into the ground. So I'll show you a bit more of that. As you can see, where the bushes are along that edge there, I can find my finger. There you go. You can see that's all bedded in nicely. So you can't see the bottom of the fencing, and it looks like it's bedded into the ground. So that's how you kind of hide the sort of glue gun. Like I said, if you don't own a glue gun, it really is a great tool to have in your toolkit and for your hobby. However, if you get one of the proper ones, not the teeny weeny ones, let me just show you that. So I've got these two here, and this is one of the sort of teeny weeny ones that you get like from Hobbycraft and stuff, and then this is obviously the big boy kind of stuff. They both have their uses. I do use both of them, so it's not because I've now bought this one I don't use this one anymore. I'd still do use this one because it does allow you to get into some of the sort of tighter areas. But the thing is with this one, it doesn't get as hot. And so this is made sort of more for crafts, whereas this one does get very hot. And this particular one, you can either use it connected via a lead, or in this case, you can also unplug it and use it sort of freehand. And I highly recommend these things. They really do. They're not particularly expensive. This one was, I think, is about £5 or something. And this one's, I think, it's about 14 or 15 or something like that. But it was well worth the money. And I've used it a lot. So I wouldn't even, So, I mean, you'd easily get your money back for the use of these things because I'm constantly using them for the hobby. So, you constantly find uses for these. So that's really, really cool. Something else I should actually mention as well is that the bushes that I've done have also saved me a load of money because I've done it via my technique of the coffee grinder and sponges, and it saves me a whole heap of money through not buying the woodland scenic stuff. And here you go, some in the pot here still. I haven't finished it all yet, and you can just see how it is. And all that is just ground up sponges and basically added some colour to it, put it in the coffee grinder, mix it all up, and you kind of get it in these various tones. And you only need one green and one black. That's all you need. Maybe one white, if that. And then you can just use those three colours to sort of variate the shades. And because there's limited space in the coffee grinder, it means, generally speaking, that you kind of always end up with slightly different shades because you never end up quite putting in quite the right mixture in. But that's fantastic. And then you can also see that I've got a load of details. There's still loads more to do. I've got some ground lever signals. I inadvertently broke the one that was here, so I've now got to replace that one, which I think I've got a spare one at the back. I've got some ground signals. Some ground signals. So it will all start to get put back together again. But we're virtually there. And I'm really happy about this. Oh yeah, one last thing. So before we go, I've inadvertently changed the track configuration that I had going on here. And basically what it was is that yesterday in the earlier clip, I say yesterday, well, it was actually yesterday, but for you, it was only a few seconds or a few minutes. There was a crossover that goes here across the main line. But I ended up having a whole load of polarity issues when I started connecting it up, which I suspected was going to be the issue. That was going to be the case. And I've got a auto reverse feature, an auto reverse, but I just cannot get my head around those things. I really can't. I don't know why. People have tried to explain it to me on a few occasions how to do it. I've gone onto the GaugeMaster website to see how you wire it up, but with my track, I just cannot get my head around it. So, as it so happens, I had the point work in any case, so it hasn't really cost me any additional money whatsoever, and it's just allowed me to get on with it. So now what I'm doing is, and it's also created an extra bonus feature. So what I've now done is that's the head shunt for Freightliner. Now when the train's ready to go, it can be reversed onto the heritage line run round, so it's still not affecting the main line. Because even if I used the crossover to go here, you'd still have to stop the trains along the main line to allow the trains to cross over anyway. So from that point of view, it's not going to be a big deal. So instead of it going this crossover onto the main line like it should, what it's going to end up doing is going onto the heritage line run round, and then when it's ready, it can then just go facing the right way around onto the main line. And that I'd rather have that than me trying to faff around, trying to get my head around how to do polarities and how to try and work that out. This way, there is no polarity issues whatsoever. And the trains have been tested, so I'm really pleased with that. So yesterday I was test running. There is Paddington supervising. I was test running the little shunter and my Batman 66 and also the 50 because that one's got sound in it. And then I added, because I originally tested it with a 73 because that was the one with no sound on it, and it was not, and it's a Hornby Loco, so that was the first one that got used. And then as I've sort of worked things out, then I started testing out with sound, which was the 50. And then when I wanted to test that sort of the operation side of it, I started using the 66 with those two wagons, because those are the two wagons I'm using in the freight yard, plus the 08, and see how that kind of worked. As you can see around the back there, there's some limited fencing left that I have, but that is pretty much it. So before we go, I thought I'd show you the Freightliner yard with the actual buildings installed. They're not, so you've got a better idea of what I'm talking about. So the whole idea of putting the footprints on my buildings is to know exactly every time the exact position of these buildings and know exactly where they go. So therefore, if I move the buildings, I know exactly how to put them back in what position they were in. And as you can see from this building here, that was more positioned sort of like slightly offset to the one in front. And we'll have a little zoom in of that. So this building here used to be offset and it used to cover this line here. So that means this track here in the middle would never existed because it used to overhang onto this track. But as you can see now, it's definitely opened up this space here, which I'm really pleased about, because it always was a bit tight and constricted. Although I liked it, it was a bit tight. And then you can see that I've added this wall in here, and I've got this little building, the shunters building that's over there. That was over there, is now over here. Because then the other building has now got a modified footbridge for that, which we'll show you also, and we'll show it to you from the other side. So from this side, you can clearly see that this part of the yard is now much more open to what it was before, which I'm really pleased about. I'm also pleased with the extra siding space because that will give me an extra storage track and more operational interest and playability. And like I said, I'll do a video on this for those of you who are interested. And then we've got these two back-to-back buildings instead of this, so it's similar to this one big long building. So essentially this line here will go all the way through this first building and the second building, and this second line here will only just go into the first building only. Now I've had to make a compromise because the doors don't quite line up at the back, but I'll just have them shut down. And also some of the shutters also had a little door built in, so I can actually do that. So that's something else I'm going to have to sort of do, but it's just one of those compromises, but I'm quite happy to do that. I think this whole thing just looks so much better and bigger and wider. And if I zoom out just a touch more, I think I've sort of done what I can do with this, and I think this is going to be so much more better operationally. I mean, I already have fun with this as it is, but I think it's just going to be better generally. So here's the building that I was promised you and how it works. Now something else that was always bothering me about this was, before I used to have a building sort of here, but then when I repurposed this space here, I could use that building over here. So this is the main reception building, which is great. So you can have people booking on and off here without necessarily going into here, into this side, unless they're doing deliveries and things like that. But the idea is that it crosses the main line here, and I didn't really like that. So I had to find a way of getting around that. So this is my old Dapol footbridge, which I wasn't reusing anymore at the back. And I decided to mess around with a few ideas with this. So what I've done is I've basically chopped it down and added like a little roof. And there's actually a door which I stuck on here on the other side. And basically it's safer for the workers to go up the stairs from the second level and go up the stairs and then cross over the railway line and then come down the other end without having to cross the main line through the actual level crossing. So again, it's a safety thing, but my shunters hut was over here. So that's why it's been relocated down there. And this seems to me to make more sense. It also creates a nice bit of interest, especially with the cam truck coming along here. I just think once the cam truck, when you see that, I think it creates a nice little bit of extra interest. So overall, I'm really, really, really pleased with this whole build. And as you can see, it's a lot bigger. Now, I don't know whether, I don't think you would have done, but I did buy a load of 3D printed parts which have arrived, which I'm really pleased with. And there's going to be a separate video on that. Now, whether that's going to be the next video or whether that's going to be, because I'm also thinking, like I said, of doing a little mini session of a demo of how I run this sort of yard here. Because some people might be thinking, oh, that looks really nice, but how does it actually work in reality? So I might just do a video on that. So for those people who are kind of interested in doing a sort of smaller size layout like this, then, or just have a little shunting yard like this, then they might be quite happy to do that. One of the other things to note is, as you can see, before I go, is you can't see the re-railer at the back because it's behind those buildings, which is one of the reasons why we have the pallet over there, because that will tell me that I'm on target with the uncoupler at the back there, so I can then basically uncouple easily without having to sort of use an uncoupler, a manual uncoupler. So basically that pallet there acts as a marker for where to stop the train to make sure it's stopping on its marks to be able to be uncoupled from the wagons. So this concludes the end of today's video, and thank you for joining me, and if you got this far, thanks for watching all the way through, really appreciate it. Please keep your comments coming through and I will endeavour to get back to you, or if I don't get back to you, which is what I haven't really been doing, I'll do another one of those videos where I go through all the comments in one video. So, you know, don't be afraid to ask. Even if you don't get a reply, you know, the chances are when I next do one of these videos of the video responses, then no doubt that I will come back to you and on a video, and so and answer any questions or comments that you may have, and also you'll get a mention. So yeah, so take care, and until the next time, it's bye from me, and my name's Susanna, and I live with trains. Goodbye.